John, today's topic with Billy Anderson around having courage to get out of your comfort zone was just absolutely moving. And there were so many quotes in this that I was able to take notes on.
Yeah, I think we all have limiting beliefs that we talked about here with Billy, and it really boils down to your comfort zone, right? How am I going to be judged? Do I have physical fears of doing something? And what really triggered me, Rich, was how overcoming some of these fears can really propel you forward.
Yeah, and this line between, what is actually courageous and what is crazy because it can go too far. This is just a really compelling message from Billy Anderson.
This episode is being brought to you by IOI Ventures. We all know that digital marketing is vital to our company's growth. Unfortunately, many of us entrepreneurs don't know where to start. We simply feel overwhelmed by acronyms like CTA, CRM, and GA. It's time for all of us to stop feeling stuck because our partners at IOI Ventures have the experience and track record to get us moving in the right direction. Want to learn more? Go to ioiventures.com/EU and sign up for your free 30-minute consultation.
Hey, Billy, welcome to the Entrepreneurs United podcast. We're so happy to have you today.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, good. Well, I know you wrote a book. Your comfort zone is killing you. And there's a lot to just the title. Your
Yes.
comfort zone is killing you. Can you speak to why did you write the book? And additionally, what did you get out of writing it? What did you learn?
Sure. Well, so many things. I wrote the book originally. I've always been an adrenaline junkie. So it started with a bit of an addiction to fear. But of course, courage is just the proactive version of fear. And just, you can't talk about courage without talking about comfort zones. It's the same thing, right? We step out of our comfort zone and we need to be courageous. So yeah, just always been an adrenaline junkie. And then what happened, how that kind of morphed was I started leading wilderness adventure trips for youth and adults. And just within those comfort zone exercises it was just a reminder of the kind of things that people worry about in life. And we got a million things we can worry about, but they all boil down to a few things. And getting out of your comfort zone seemed to be the antidote for kind of all of it.
And it's courage is a proactive version of fear. Mm-hmm. What are some of the things that you find people are afraid of that require courage?
Sure. Yeah, there's so many things, but again, they boil down. And I didn't realize this until I coached one-on-one hundreds of people, and you start to see patterns, right? And it's like you have all these lists of fears, but yeah, I really started to see them boil down to kind of one thing, more or less. And it was often related to, how am I going to be judged? So there's definite sort of fears like more physical stuff, like, snakes, sharks, heights, all that. That's fine. That keeps us alive. But when it comes to kind of getting out of our comfort zone and really feeling like we're living our sort of a big life, getting fulfillment, all that kind of stuff, it always seems to come down to, I'm thinking about doing X. It's scary because how am I going to be judged if I try to do X? In general terms, that's kind of what I've discovered.
Yeah. Help me with the healthy version of how am I going to be judged? Because I can visualize the unhealthy version on either side.
Totally.
I don't want to move forward because I'm going to be judged or I'm really afraid of what other people are going to think, and that controls me. I get that. The other side of the coin is people who are like, yeah, I don't care what other people think. I'm not interested in that at all. I do my own thing. And it's like, neither of those seem healthy. Like,
Yep.
How do you find what is the healthy middle, and how do you find it?
Right. Yeah. So basically, that fear of how am I going to be judged, that's programmed into us because even now as well, but for hundreds of thousands of years, if you weren't part of a tribe and if you didn't belong, you're going to get kicked out of the tribe, you're going to die in a cave or however far we go back. So the healthy version is, because you're right, with like social media, TikTok, everything, it's like, oh my gosh, what are people going to think? It's not always healthy. So the healthy version is when we've kind of defined the person that we want to be, or as a company, the company we want to be, and then making our decisions based on that. So if we get judged positively or negatively, we're still proud of the way we're behaving and the person or the company we're choosing to be, right? Uh, and it's also just good for everyone to know, myself included, that again we're programmed to worry about what people think, but then just taking that step back and saying, okay, hang on, am I proud of myself in this decision that I've made? Okay, and then again, I still listen to all the judgment I get, especially if it's from people I care about and respect. But I listen to any feedback, anything like that I'm going to get, but then I get to decide myself. You know what? That's important, or you know what? I'm still happy with what I did there. Maybe I'll do this differently next time. But again, who am I? Who do I want to be? What impact do I want to have? And then I sort of judge things around that. Does that make sense?
It does, Billy, but I have a question. I feel like I have pretty good comfort on who I am and who I want to be, but I don't want to jump out of an airplane 100 times.
Sure.
All right. And I know you have. That's outside of my comfort zone, but I
Yeah.
think it will kill me if I do jump out. It won't kill me if I don't. Can you
Sure.
handle that? Because your comfort zone is killing you. What do you mean by the word killing?
Right.
Versus, hey, some people are very comfortable in their comfort zone. Why do I need to jump out of an airplane? I don't want to jump out of an airplane. I'm using
Sure.
that obviously as an example, but
Yeah.
why do people really need to get out of their comfort zone? Why is that so important?
Sure. So, in essence, you don't need to. But the problem is that the more time we spend in our comfort zone, the more our comfort zone will actually start to shrink and more things will scare us.
Hmm.
So we step out of our comfort zone and then come back in, our comfort zone grows, right? Every time we step out, because courage is a muscle. Every time we step out, the comfort zone grows. If we spend too much time in it, we get scared of more stuff, more and more, because we haven't been flexing that courage muscle. And so, yeah, you can stay in your comfort zone. What I've found is that people there's more and more and more things that frighten us, and we end up just pulling back even more on who we are and what we think, and not speaking up for ourselves or other people or anything like that.
Wow. Okay. So I could use a potential parallel to COVID. And I'm going to just use this as an example,
Yeah.
right? A lot of family members of people, not just looking at myself, face some pretty tough times in COVID, potentially our parents as an example, right? There are a lot of lockdowns in Canada, as you may have experienced. My parents
Yep.
experienced that, right? Literally police roaming the streets to make sure no one's at your house. Coming out of that, it's kind of like, can I even go to the grocery store anymore? Can I even do these things? But as an entrepreneur and leader, maybe a different kind. If you're not stretching that muscle on challenging your business or challenging yourself as a leader or growing, you have the same kind of reaction. I don't know if I can do that anymore. I don't know if I have that skill anymore. Is that what you're kind of talking about in terms of just that muscle memory of pushing yourself?
It's exactly it. And so our brain sees, or we feel that we're scared,
Mm-hmm.
and whether it's COVID, whether it's jumping out of the airplane, whether it's disagreeing with your boss,
Mm-hmm.
right? Your body reacts the same every time. So whether it's one or the other, you can improve that courage muscle by facing those. So can you be more courageous at work because you jumped out of a plane? Yeah, because every time you do it, you're building new neural pathways, and your brain is, oh yeah, I know this feeling. I pushed through it recently. Now, that being said, you don't ever have to jump out of a plane. The coach in me would say, what might be the opportunity of you jumping out of a plane? So I'll ask you that, John.
Hmm.
What might be good about jumping out of a plane for you?
Wow. And I've been challenged by this before because my wife would, and I told her I would not.
Yeah, and you don't
Uh,
have to. I'm just curious
no,
how you
I
answer
know,
that.
but I have a hard time seeing the benefit. But you asked me what would be good, so I need to find it.
He
And
said,
I think
what might be good?
What
I
might
think
be
it's
good?
the
might
yeah.
overcoming. Meaning right now I don't have interest in doing it because I'm afraid of doing it. I'm
Hmm.
not necessarily afraid of dying. I just it intimidates me. And
Yeah.
so to overcome that intimidation could be like, nothing intimidates me. I guess so. What might come good of it is that something in my business life or even personal life may happen and go, you know what? I was intimidated by jumping in an airplane, but I overcame that. I can overcome this too. That'd probably be the one good thing I could see coming out of it.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. Again, we're almost also building up a bank of courageous experiences that we've done,
Hmm.
and it's literally that. It's like, no, no, hang on. I mean, I've got this presentation. I'm kind of nervous about it to this important, I don't know, investor. These feelings. Oh yeah, this is the exact same feeling I had when I was
Hmm.
about to jump out of that plane.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Okay.
it's that exercise of facing it, feeling it, and pushing through.
So Billy, somebody who writes a book, your comfort zone is killing you. I'd
Mhm.
have to believe that you have some relevant stories that connected you to that specifically. Is that fair?
Yeah, yeah, of course. I think you asked earlier that idea of your comfort zone is killing you.
Yeah.
Yeah, killing's a bit of an attention grabbing word for
Sure.
a good headline. So it's not actually killing you, but it can feel like it is. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. Well, to the point you just made, you're either growing or you're not. And if you're not, you're going to go in the other way, right? So if you're too stuck in your comfort zone, to your point, you're not using those muscles. I won't say you're disintegrating. That's not exactly what's going on, but you're not growing, and therefore you're going the other way. So I
Right.
get that. But can you share with me maybe a little bit of a personal story of yours that maybe you were stuck in your comfort zone and it was holding you back and you
Mhm.
broke through it and it's kind of the genesis for, hey, I'm an expert in this thing, that's why I wrote this book.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the first one that comes to mind is I had a good career in advertising. That was my first career in Europe and then in Canada. Uh, and then one day it was at a TV shoot for a fast food company that I won't mention, and won't get into too much detail, but I literally just took a step back at one point and was like, "Whoa, what am I doing? I don't want to sell chicken things for the rest of my life." And that sort of started as like, "Hang on, am I sort of living true to myself?" But I'd grown up in whatever neighborhood where everybody went to university, and then you go to college, you go to university, and then you get a desk job. That's what my dad did. That's what everybody is quote unquote supposed to do. And I'd done all that stuff and I had a good corporate job making okay money, and I just wasn't happy. And again, I just wasn't feeling like I was living true to myself and what was important for me. And so I quit that successful advertising career and I started leading these wilderness trips for Outward Bound. I think I made $15,000 that first year that all I did was lead trips. So that's and not just the money aside, it was just again growing up with this is what success is, and now I'm throwing all that out to do this thing instead that I think is going to be more fulfilling. That was probably big picture this one, maybe the scariest thing I've ever done.
Mm.
That makes sense?
Yeah,
So what's the
absolutely.
so what behind that, Billy? So
Yeah, what do you mean?
and I'm asking this intentionally, gosh, almost adversarially. So what? So you had a nice corporate job, and then you went out to go do some guiding in wilderness. Like, okay, and that took a little bit of courage. Like, what's the so what? Why does that matter? What did that unlock in you that led to something, or was that the it that you just loved the outdoors and you were so fulfilled? Because I feel like I got the action. I'm
Mhm.
missing the emotional component of
Sure,
what did that do for you?
sure, sure. I like it. So the outdoors is irrelevant. It's more that I'm doing this, which is what I'd grown up through the corporate job. I'm doing this right now. It's what I'm supposed to like doing, and I don't. That alone is terrifying. Like, hang on, what's wrong with me? This is supposed to be fulfilling. It's not. I can think of this other thing, which just happens to be the outdoors, but I can think of this other career that I don't know anyone who's ever left this kind of career to do that, but it's what I want to do. And I didn't, at that point in my life, I hadn't narrowed down that big fear of how will I be judged. But I know now that that's what was involved. Um, and I've just seen with the work I've done with people that facing up to that, people might think negatively of me. negatively of me if I move from this to this. And to go ahead and do that anyway, you're literally going against some of the deepest DNA programming you have. It's like, don't step out of the box. Don't make people dislike you. Don't rock the boat. Don't disagree. It's kind of going against all of that. And those things are ingrained in us because for hundreds of thousands of years, they kept us alive. Does that make sense as far as the emotion?
It does.
If not, say
And
so.
then I think the key that I'm pulling out of this is you started at what I'm supposed to do.
Yep.
And where it went to is what do I want to do?
Mhm.
And having the courage to do what you want on your terms with your life and be who you want to be and not be so preoccupied with this. What am I supposed to do? And what does
Totally.
everybody else think? And what does society say? So I feel like that transition for you of what am I supposed to do versus what do I want to do is the very unlocking of fulfillment,
Yep.
of
I think so.
getting clarity on what you want and then go get it. Is that, am I gathering and summarizing that, what I heard there?
I think so. I think so totally. And one other thing that you mentioned was the clarity. And unfortunately, clarity, true clarity only comes from doing. So we can try to get clear. It's like, I think I'm doing, I think I don't like this. I think I'd like this. Don't really know until we do it. So yeah, you try as much as you can to get clarity. And then as we get older, our guesses get better, but that's from constantly trying new stuff. So the decision worked in the end, but it might not have. But again, the doing it would have brought the clarity in the end.
How do we have responsible courage to get out of our comfort zone versus reckless? Like
Yeah,
when
sure.
you work with coaching clients and a coaching client is like, well, I'm thinking of doing this, and it like is going to implode their business, there have to be times where you go, yeah, I'm not sure I do that. Like that
Yep.
might be too far out of your comfort zone, or you're too far away from. Like, how do you vet with your coaching clients the difference between what is reckless and what is well informed stepping out of a comfort zone?
Sure. Yeah, I call that the difference between courage and crazy, right? And there's some courageous opportunities are kind of crazy, or they're just not going to get us what we want. So the first step is a certain foundation of self awareness, in terms of what drives you, but also what your fears are, because otherwise we might choose to do courageous stuff, and it's not actually in line with who we're trying to be or the impact we're trying to have. It's trying to compensate for that time we got bullied all through grade 8, right? And so that a high level of self-awareness is important. Somebody once said, the monster I created to protect the kid in me is hard to manage, right? So we've got baggage from our entire life. And so again, we just want to make sure that we're checking in. Hang on, I'm thinking about doing this courageous thing at work. Does this align with the person I want to be and with where what our company is trying to be? Okay. And once we do that, if we don't know, we check in, right? And in an organization, it's a piece of cake. You ask your boss, right? And then you've kind of covered your butt. It's hopefully not a CLM, a career limiting move. But yes, checking in with yourself. What's my real motivation for this? Maybe who does this benefit? And then you just check. You check in with others.
Mm, making a note on that. Who does this benefit?
Yeah, or even before that, who will it impact? Yeah, who will it impact and who will it benefit? Because it might impact people in a negative way.
Okay. And then, gosh, I like that quote. The monster I created to protect the kid in me
It's
is
hard to
hard to
manage.
manage.
Yeah.
And it sounded like you were quoting somebody else in that. Talk to me
Yes.
about the origin of where that came from.
I don't remember. I got so many quotes. Half of them I'm not even sure if they're mine anymore, but that one I know. That one I know isn't mine, but there's just so much involved there. And we've all got fears and limiting beliefs. Everyone does. Even if you had a great upbringing, we've all got stuff that happened. And trauma is a scale. Trauma is a really big word, but we've all got it to some degree, and that sort of puts those limiting beliefs into ourselves. And that's where that thing is, the monster I created to protect the kid in me. So you see it sometimes with people with working just ridiculously hard, or they can't work hard enough, or they can't make enough money. And I've worked with people like that, and it turns out, when they were a kid, or they had an older sibling who always did better, or they came home with marks, and their parents said, "Oh, that's great, B plus. Where's the A minus?" Right, and that stuff gets ingrained, and we continue without realizing it, try to compensate for that our whole life. It's my favorite topic. It's fascinating. And I got one. I've got it all. I've got all this crap too.
Exactly. Billy, when I hear you say there are millions of things that people worry about, and it boils down to comfort zone, and I'm like, okay, what what is comfort zone again, and like what are the degrees? There's two things I've captured in this conversation.
Mhm.
One of them is my own personal courage to overcome something I'm fearful about, i.e., the example we gave of jumping out of a plane.
Yeah.
When I'm not worried about what people are going to think about me for jumping out of a plane. It's more about my own personal courage to do something and overcome a fear. But then there's other examples of that comfort zone, which are you've given as an example. How am I going to be judged?
Mhm.
Right? If I do this thing or I say this thing, how am I going to be judged? So now I'm worried about what other people think, not my own particular fears. So those two very distinct examples of comfort zone related items.
Yeah.
What would be third and fourth or fifth of besides those two examples?
I don't think there are.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything else. So the skydiving one's a bit more of a physical
Yep.
one. I mean, yeah, if someone says, "Hey, you want to come skydiving?" You say no. Yeah. Do we really care how we're going to be judged? Probably not. So that's
Yep.
just a bit more physically driven.
Okay.
What I found is that the stuff that holds us back, the stuff that really shows up
Yeah.
in work and in life, it's always related to that being judged.
Okay.
And those are the only two that I've noticed.
Okay. And so I would say, and I'm curious as to what your take is on, for millions of years, we've been known as humans to, try and be liked, how to win friends and influence people, and how to, we've been trained to your point, and it's been ingrained in us to do the things that people are going to appreciate and they're going to respect and like. How do you tell a leader, an entrepreneur, hey, listen, you need to have more courage to step out and don't care what people think about you. Go do what you got to do, because then that opens up the risk that is associated with that. There's been many entrepreneurs and leaders who have said things. I'll use social media as an example, right? Who've
Sure,
said things
sure.
that they truly believe in, but the moment it went on Twitter, they were canceled and it
Right,
was over, right? And they had to maybe reprogram, but they took the courage. I don't care what people think. I'm just going to go and do this. And so, how do you measure that as a leader in a business with hundreds of people or 10 people? You have to be really careful. So people have this political view. There's this political view. People
yep,
have different perspectives of life, and I sometimes find myself in the position of, look, play it safe because you have different people and you say one thing, the other 50% are going to be upset with you, or whatever. How do you encourage leaders to overcome that fear and comfort zone?
right, right. Yeah, I mean, there's first of all, there's certain topics that you just always have to be careful about,
Hmm.
right? And it's
Sure.
all the stuff that's we hear about in the news, whether it's politics, religion, gender, anything like that. We never, no matter how courageous we feel like being, we always it's I guess respect is the word. So it's like we want to marry being courageous with being respectful.
Hmm.
And I think maybe I'm just thinking of this now as you asked. Maybe that's where it can get in trouble.
Yep.
Say, hey, I'm gonna post this online. It's courageous because I know because I'm scared to do it.
Yep.
Is it respectful? Right? And maybe that's I don't know, John. This I'm just thinking of it as you asked. It's that
Yeah.
marriage between being courageous in a respectful way, and there's always a way to do it. When we give people, I teach courses on how to give feedback, and when we give feedback, there's a way to do it from love or fear. And
Yeah.
so fear would be, hey, you didn't get me that report on time. What's wrong with you? You know that's important to me.
Yeah.
Right? I'm pointing at them. A place of
Sure.
love would be, hey, you didn't get me that report on time. I was relying on you. I find you're usually more reliable about stuff like that. is there something that I'm not aware of, or did something get in the way for you? Or is it
Yeah.
something that I did? So there's different ways. One's respectful, one's not.
Understood.
Yeah,
But they still have courage. You're still addressing the conflict and not avoiding it,
totally.
which
And it
is the
actually,
courage part.
100%. And it takes way more courage to do it in that kind of caring, respectful way. Because your inner cave person wants to say, you're an idiot, you screwed up, you, and
Hmm.
don't take any blame. But the courageous, respectful way is maybe I'm going to lead with some ownership. It's
Hmm.
like, hey, look, I don't think I did anything wrong here, but if you disagree, let me know.
Yeah.
We're sometimes saying that through gritted teeth because we want to look good and be right at all costs.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a great distinction, actually, courage versus respect, right? And we got in a debate recently with a podcast guest about expressing your political views as a leader of a company. And I'm like, I would
Mm,
never do that. I don't think it's the place because
yeah,
50% of your people are going to be looking at you thinking that you've lost your mind,
yeah,
and the other 50% are going to be like, "Raw, let's go."
yeah,
But people have their own ways of doing it, and I think to the point of how am I going to be judged? You bring up a really, really good point. A lot of leaders and entrepreneurs sometimes lack the courage to even address conflict with their
oh,
team
huge.
because they're concerned that the team's going to judge. But how you address that conflict is
Hmm.
part of it. And one of the things too, that I'd love to get your take on this, Billy, is integrity is a big word. And one of the ways
Yeah,
that I like to use integrity personally in my life is, uh, you know, I lack integrity if I don't address this conflict with you, and I don't have the courage to address this conflict with you because I'm holding
yeah,
something in and I'm not being
yeah,
open and honest with you. But so I do think respect is a big thing. I think that if you do things respectfully and have courage in doing so, if people judge you, that's their problem.
totally right. And again, that's where you're still proud. We're always hoping for a certain outcome, but yeah, if we do something courageously in a respectful way and we're judged negatively, we don't want that, but we can deal with it because
Yep.
we did it respectfully. And
Okay.
I've got a bunch of values that I live by, and they're all not malleable, but there's only one that I never bend on, and that's the respect.
Okay. Well, you opened that door. I got to go right down it. So respect is one of them. Would you
Yeah,
mind sharing the other ones you have?
yeah, sure. I mean, I live in this space, and I think about it every day. So I've got a lot of values, more than I think most people should have.
Give us the
Uh,
top three or four.
yeah. So freedom, connection, fun, and simplicity. And respect is actually number five. So
Okay.
and let me explain that because I just said that respect is the only one I won't
Yep.
ever bend on, but it's number five. And the
Okay.
reason it's five instead of one for me is that I actually number mine in terms of how often or how hard I feel like I have to stick up for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in other words, freedom you don't have to stick up for as much,
No, I
and
have to.
respect you do, or the other way around.
I do have to stick up for it more. Another way to say that, really honestly, is I'm more likely to chicken out of aligning with freedom than the ones lower down.
Oh, tell me more about that. What do you mean?
Yeah, well, I've got a bit of a fear that I look out for number one more than I should, and so I will. And freedom is a big part of that for me. Getting
Hmm.
enough Billy time, as I call it,
Sure.
and so because I feel a bit guilty or there's something wrong with me for wanting so much of that, I tend to let it go. Sometimes it's like, oh no, okay, I was gonna just chill out by myself, go for my motorcycle ride next weekend, but you want help with that? Yeah, yeah, no worries. I'll do that with you. I'll do that with you. And
Hmm.
Gabor Mate said, if you have to choose between guilt and resentment, pick guilt every time. And so if I say, no, no, I'll help you with that, I'll help you with that, and then I end up resenting them, which is totally unfair because it was my own fault for
Sure.
not sticking up for my value.
I love that. So to paraphrase, the reason why it's number one in your values is because you want to keep it there front and center because it's the one you may give up on for other people's benefit as opposed to your self care, which is the most important value that you have.
Totally. And
Love it.
listen, if someone asked me to do something and I had a freedom thing for me planned,
Yeah,
but you know what? Lately, I've had a lot of freedom, so I'll let that go. I'll push
sure.
freedom aside because it's feeling pretty aligned already.
Love it. Okay. Well, because that was so powerful of an explanation, I need to ask you to keep going. Connection. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, no, a good question because I've had my 10th value is community. Um, and I've played around with what's the difference, right? So, but I can have a connection with someone without them being part of my kind of ongoing community. So it's a connection where connection for me is just a little bit deeper than, hey, how's your day going, right? So courage is often about being vulnerable. Um, and a true connection is a bit of that. So as an example, I used to give pre-COVID, I would go downtown Toronto to this big square, Yonge and Dundas Square, and I would give out free hugs, and I would hold a sign that says "free hugs."
Mm,
And so that was, maybe a 3-second connection with someone, but it was deep because you can tell they're always a bit nervous to do it. They would sometimes stand over there and watch other people get hugs and then get the courage up to come and get a hug. So you knew they were pushing themselves too. And I feel a bit vulnerable doing it too. What if no one? What if I'm standing here holding this sign and nobody comes asking for a hug? So
yeah.
it's such a quick, even 3-second moment, but for both of you, there was a connection involved because there was a fear
Wow. Love it.
involved.
Okay. And fun. I hear that you add a lot of fun into your keynote
Mhm.
speak. So I'm sure you incorporate that in what you do every day. And it sounds like from what I'm hearing already, in terms of the things you like to do, motorcycle, jumping out of planes, looks like you have a lot
Mhm.
of that in your freedom. But what does fun mean to you in your language?
Yeah, sure. And I'm actually about to change the name of that. I carry my values around on a laminated card, and I'm about to change it and reprint it from fun to play.
Hmm.
Um, and again, it's just a more accurate definition of what I'm talking about. So, play is just fun for the sake of fun with other people. I'm a big joker. I like to tease people. I'm good at not overstepping, I think. But yeah, I like to tease other people. I like to play little pranks on people, things like that. So that's kind of play. Yeah, that sort of best describe play. And like all my values, there it is satisfying to align with them for me, like for me to go play, like on the motorcycle. But it's infinitely more fulfilling if I can help somebody else do that.
Yeah.
So someone who doesn't have any says they don't have any time for play, it's work, work, work. If I can get them to play a bit,
Yeah.
that's me getting it as well.
Well, I now I know why Rich likes you so much because Rich loves to pull pranks. Just ask him
Oh,
about some pranks
amazing.
when you see him at the conference. Ask him about a couple pranks he pulled in Buffalo one year. But anyway, next one,
Amazing. Love it.
simplicity. Last one, and then we'll move on. The simplicity value. What does that mean for you?
Hmm. Um, yeah, just like it sounds, keeping life as simple as possible. So whether that's in terms of how many things you own, how many commitments you have, how many friends you bother trying to hang out with. Again, another quote that's not mine. Um, you need 6 people to carry your coffin.
Mm,
And we live in this world like, wow, we need thousands of friends. And so, yeah, that's a lot of it. So, friends, freedom, commitments. Yeah, just keeping it really, yeah, keeping that really simple. I mean, just this morning I was downloading podcasts and I've got like 11 lined up and it's like, no, no, delete half of those, right? It's just, I'm going to look at that number and I feel like I'm behind, right? So I don't get rid of them all. Just keep one and just make life feel a little bit simpler. And I have a one and a
yeah,
half year old daughter. So it's like, man, that simplicity should probably move up maybe even a little bit higher. Of
love that. Thanks for sharing.
course. Yeah. Thanks for asking.
In your book, you have an area on what is your life purpose.
Hmm.
Whew, that's heavy.
Hmm.
That seems like kind of a big question. How do you
Yeah,
go about discovering what your life purpose is?
sure. Sure. So the life purpose just means the thing that's going to be most fulfilling and enjoyable for you. And I do prefer the word fulfilling because things can be enjoyable, but not necessarily fulfilling, but fulfilling is usually enjoyable as well. There's different ways to do that. There's a lot of one-on-one conversation that needs to happen. I mean, I guess one easy way to do it is just looking back, or even making a list of all the things where you felt happiest. most proud? Proud is a good one. What are some examples of when you were most proud of yourself? Um, when you were happiest, when you felt the best. And what you see is you really start to see a pattern. Even once you have those things listed out, it can still kind of sometimes be hard to see it because it's you. And right, we don't see ourselves accurately, and sometimes it's helpful to get someone else to help see the patterns. But you start to see those patterns. And the spoiler is that it's always going to be about adding value to others. So adding value to others is going to light us up the most. But then how you do that is going to be combined with, the things that are important to you, but also the things you like. Um, Usually the things you like are some of the things you're great at. Those usually go hand in hand, but not always. Does that make sense?
It does, but I find it striking that we started the conversation around the majority of fear is centered around how I'm going to be judged.
Hmm.
And then I just heard, hey, spoiler alert, it's always about adding value to others.
Yep.
So this still seems like there's a external component to it versus internal. Can you break this down for me?
Yeah. So when it's about adding value to others, so and then how are we going to be judged? Sure. So what gets in the way often is a belief in ourself in terms of, at a core level, at some level, at some point of our life, we believe that maybe I'm not actually that great at anything, right? And that's debilitating for a lot of people. So it's the ability, it's taking that step to be like, no, there's going to be something that I'm good at, and I'm going to try to do that and do it more and more and more and more as much as I possibly can. But because we've got this built-in fear of how am I going to be judged, we tend to be tempted to kind of hold back, do what's safe, don't take any chances, don't rock the boat because I might be seen as a failure. So it's kind of, yeah, you're basically in order to add as much value as you can, you're doing it in a way that's meaningful for you and leverages your strengths. And a lot of people there can't even tell you what their strengths are. And a big reason for that is if I go ahead, if I put myself out there, I'm going to make this big impact on the world because it means the most to me. If it doesn't work, I'm going to feel like a failure. But more importantly than that, it's going to make me feel like what's important to me doesn't matter. And we're all worried at some level that what matters to us or who we want to be isn't good enough. And therefore we won't be accepted. Therefore we'll get kicked out of the cave, we'll die, is basically what it kind of boils down to. Does that make sense? I feel like I kind of rambled there.
No, it connected for me that this, hey, it's always about adding value to others. The internal part of it that you broke down was, but the topic is meaningful for you and you're leveraging your strengths. Like
Mhm.
that's the part about you.
Interesting.
And then using your strengths and what's meaningful to you to see others enjoy it. I mean, you just mentioned it yourself that if you could get other people to play, it's even better than you playing. So, like
Always.
that is meaningful to you. Play. It's a strength of yours to get people to step out of their comfort zone. But what you love is watching other people do it more than you doing it. So I can relate with that for sure, and that was absolutely clarifying for what I was asking there.
And
Can you
if I can
go
just,
ahead?
sorry, Rich, if I can just
Yeah,
jump in,
please.
that's such a good example because, I'm 51 and I'm helping people play. Like
Mhm.
that's not a real job.
Right.
Shouldn't you be like curing cancer or doing this or doing that, right? So play is a perfect example, just like how am I going to be judged? It's like, well, you know what? If you're really good at it, if you make it about others, and if it's meaningful for you, and it's not illegal, who cares what it is? But some things are, yeah, a little bit harder to push. And for me, I find that sometimes for me to play, it's that inner voice is like, hang on, is that a bit too goofy? You should do something a little more serious. So that's how that how will I be judged might tie into that, I think.
And I think in that, as you were just talking, and I'm processing, it's just so natural for us to want to share things that are meaningful or good for ourselves. I mean, we see it at at a meal with family where you're eating a steak and you're like, "This is so good. Do you want to try it?" Like it's not good
Mhm.
enough that you're eating it. Like you want to see somebody else enjoy it. You're like, "Hey, I love riding this one roller coaster. You should come out and ride it with me. You'd love it too." Like
Yeah,
there's something in our DNA that wants us to enroll others in what creates joy in us. So yeah,
totally. Once, yeah,
I'm
once you
really
hit a
getting it.
cool, and that's even more once you hit a certain age. Um, that first phase of life is often our own adventures, our own selfish stuff, which is fine. I did it too. But then, yeah, eventually you get to a point. I get to a point like, yeah, I've traveled enough. I've done all the adrenaline stuff. I could do more. But we get to a point where, yeah, like you said, we realize it's going to be more fulfilling to help other people do that
Mm.
because we can kind of tick that box. And we had to do that first. It's kind of like Joseph Campbell's hero's journey, right? We go off, we figure it out, and then we want to come back and share with other people.
I would love to hear one of your more lesser known success stories with a client. Not the one that's like, Billy, give me your hallmark story. Like the one where you made the biggest impact. I don't want to hear the biggest impact. What I want to hear is something that really moved the needle for a client of yours to step out of their comfort zone. And it's one of your lesser known stories that I'd love to hear about.
Sure. Yeah, so the first one that comes to mind is, and for any answer I give to this, it's going to seem like a simple one, but for that person it wasn't. So, but this
Yeah.
is a lesser known one. So this girl was scared of everything, everything. And so we talked about courage. She's like, okay, I'm on board. I'm on board. I'm on board. I want to try something. I want to try something. And you can see the hesitation even when she said, I want to try something. So the first thing was she was going to say hi to one stranger a week. So smaller in terms of in the grand scheme of courage, maybe that doesn't seem like much, but in her, that's all irrelevant. In her world, it was epic, like epic. And that's what's so important with courage is that if it scares you, it counts to face it. And so she did it. She went out and she said hi to one stranger before I met with her again. And she came back and she was so proud of herself. And that's it. And she's like, and people always say this to me, like, oh, isn't that silly? Isn't that silly? I was scared of that. It's like, no, it's irrelevant. If you were scared of it, it counts. And so then she said, like, okay, what now? What now? Because it's almost like it's empowering to not be given into that fear. And then you just want to know what's next. And what's that much scarier that I can do next.
Mm.
And she was so proud. It was one of the most fulfilling conversations I think I've ever had because it was for her, it was huge. It was huge, even though for a lot of people it wouldn't matter.
So,
Yeah.
but Billy, this is. Let me give a pop quiz first because it
Yeah.
relates to this story, and I'm not going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to Rich because you may
Uh-oh.
get it too easily. Rich, who said the quote? Do one thing every day that scares you.
Oh gosh, I don't remember. I remember the quote though.
Billy,
Was it Teddy Roosevelt?
Eleanor.
Eleanor Roosevelt, nice.
Ah,
Eleanor Roosevelt has the popular quote, do one thing every day that scares you. And one may take that as, I'm going to jump out of an airplane. If I'm not jumping on an airplane today, I'm not doing my job. But for some people, maybe just talk to the person next to you on the bus.
1,000%. I had one client who wanted to ask her neighbor to stop letting their dog pee on her lawn.
Yeah.
Like it's like I said, if it feels scary, it counts. And
Yeah.
it can be debilitating to try to think too big. And actually what happens is our brain actually tries to get us to think of bigger things because then we have a valid excuse not to do it. But if we pick something really small, it's like, oh, I've got no reason not to do that. But
Yep.
yeah, it can be tiny, 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 tiny.
Yeah. But it begs the question, like, Rich, is there anything in your schedule today that scares you? Right. And I'd ask the question to myself, and I'd ask the question to every entrepreneur listening to this podcast. And if there isn't, maybe you should add some into your schedule because we all have something that we are not doing that would probably scare us. That's why we're
Hmm.
not doing it.
Yeah.
John, does it count that later this afternoon I'm getting a permanent retainer put in behind my lower teeth, like a lingual bar, and that scares me? I'm like, am I going to lisp for the rest of my life if I keep this thing in? And are people still going to like me if I lisp? Does that count?
Hey, listen.
You tell us. Does it scare you?
Yeah, it sounds like
a little bit.
By the way, it sounds like it scares you, and you could avoid it. You could just call them and cancel and tell them you're sick and not show up, and then have damaged your teeth later on. So yeah, absolutely it counts. But I look for maybe the more fun side or play side of things. But that'd be a little bit. But it's also just handling the courage. Like you said something. Courage is being vulnerable. That I absolutely love the way you frame that. And I think when I think about comfort zone, I think about that vulnerability to just do something you don't feel like doing, but it's going to maybe improve your health, Rich. Maybe it's going to help you overcome, different physical fears you have. Or sometimes if you're, there's that phone call you've been meaning to make, you just keep pushing off because you're scared to make it. Make the dang phone call. All right, have that courage, and I think we need to incorporate some of that into our lives as entrepreneurs. So that's maybe that's the title of this podcast, Rich. Do one thing every day that scares you. But I really enjoyed this conversation for sure.
Yeah, same here. I'd love, before we close, Billy, tell us the most outrageous thing that you've done that was outside of your comfort zone. What's something that we'll walk away and be like, wow, that's nuts. I can't believe he did that. Do you have something that goes there?
Yeah, I've got a bunch.
Because it would make you likable, Billy. It would make it so I would like you.
Well,
I don't want you to be afraid. Yeah.
If you promise. I don't know what the most has been. Not every day, but every time I do a keynote, I wake up and I look in the mirror and I say, maybe we should shave that mustache today. Because I feel like people won't take me seriously, but this is me trying to align with number 4, play. But literally every time that voice in my head says, maybe it's time to take that mustache off. So that, for me, again, I get to decide, right? What's craziest for me. This is a big one. This mustache is a real big one.
Well, and for those who are listening and not on YouTube, Billy has a handlebar mustache. It's not up to his eyebrows, but it's got a little. Is that what you call it, Billy? A little handlebar piece on it, or what's the technical term of it?
I don't know. It curls up. Some handlebars go down.
Okay.
Handlebars going up takes a lot of wax, and it's me kind of just saying, no, this is who I am, and it's scary every day I don't shave it off.
And what's the meaning of the mustache for you? Is that play, or what is that, and why? How did you come across picking that?
Yeah, so big picture, it's just authenticity, the courage to be myself, and that's the tagline of my company: find the courage to be you. And then more specifically, where does that fall into? Yeah, it falls into play, and just wanting to be playful. And I first did it because I always thought it would be kind of fun. And then I grew it, and I was like, oh, no, I kind of like this, and maybe I'll take it off. And then right away I was like, no, that's me just chickening out. Crap, I gotta keep it.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a week or so here, and seeing each other in person. This was great. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for the opportunity. I enjoyed every second of it. Thanks to both of you.
Please stick around for a few more minutes while Rich and I break down this episode.
How am I going to be judged? Oh my gosh, does that resonate? And he even said something like, being, whatever he said, bullied, made fun of at 8 years old or something like that. And then he had said that quote about the monster I created to protect the kid in me is hard to manage. Man, does that resonate for me? I was one of the people that felt like I was, excluded as a kid on the playground. I was not the fastest. I didn't have the best hands to catch a ball. And I continue to have some defense mechanisms that I don't prefer, and they're hard to manage. So this struck a deep, deep chord for me.
Yeah, no question. having the courage to be the best you can be really is the message, right? And I think way too many times we have these insecurities that, if I do this, if I say this, if I act this way, if I do certain things that are me, people are going to judge me in a certain way. And I think what really clarified this for me was the, marry courage and respect. And if you marry courage and respect, I think people really respect you in return for who you are, how you portray yourself, and you can be the best you in people's eyes. And if they don't, then that's their problem. That's not your
Mm.
problem. If you marry courage and respect, I think sometimes we see the linkage between courage and abrasiveness, and courage and I have courage. 'Cause I'm going to say what I think I want to say, and it hurts other people. I think that's a really important distinction that we made in this conversation is have courage, but do it in the most respectful manner. And I think that's critical, Rich, for entrepreneurs and leaders. Way too many entrepreneurs and leaders are A-type personalities, and I have courage. I'm going to run through that brick wall. I'm going to jump out of airplanes. I'm going to do whatever. But then they also lose trust and confidence with their team, with their vendors, with their customers, because they have too much courage with abrasiveness as opposed to with respect.
Well, and early in the conversation, when I asked him to define healthy, and he said, well, you really need to define who you are and who you want to be as a person or a company. And then if you get judged for behaving that way, you're okay with it because you're clear. And that seems like a really important step is instead of being afraid about what other people are going to think,
Hmm.
living through core values, living through life purpose, as he puts it in his book, and not worrying about if people judge you. If you're living to your values and you're living to your life purpose. Now, I love the little formula that he gave. The more time you spend in your comfort zone, it shrinks.
Hmm.
And when we step out of the comfort zone, it grows. And he referred to it as a muscle, I think, at one point.
Yep.
And it's like there is this muscle of courage. He gave this little formula: face it, feel it, push through it. So when we feel afraid to do something, to step out of our comfort zone, to be familiar with that feeling. And that feeling doesn't mean don't do it. Just get familiar with that feeling, and it doesn't have to restrict us. We can face it, we can feel that, and then we can push through it. It doesn't have to control us.
Yeah, 100%. I love the flexing of the muscle, and we even see it like they talk about with germs in kids, right? When you're not exposed to any germs in the first 6 years of your life, and then you're exposed to germs, you've been in that comfort zone of no germs, and all of a sudden you get infected with viruses easier. It's the same thing with us in our lives. If we expand the level of comfort that we have with different things, then nothing intimidates us. And when we do have a setback, we're able to pick ourselves back up pretty quickly because we've built that muscle memory of how to get through these things. So I really love that. I'm curious, Rich, under the premise of do something that scares you every day to flex that muscle, right? It's good to go to the gym every day. It's good to eat well every day. It's probably good to do something that scares you every day as well to build up that muscle. I'm just very curious if you feel like you're challenging yourself in that area, because I don't feel like I am.
Hmm.
Intentionally coming up with a list. Here are the things that scare me that I'm going to take care of in 2023, as an example. And because I want to overcome these and get through them. I don't intentionally do that. I have goals, I have objectives, I have different things I want to accomplish this year, but I'm not so sure there's too many things on that list that scare me.
You know, I'm not sure I do either, and I'm not sure I focus on doing things that scare me. I do take a very intentional approach to doing new things. And I think that grows my ability to do more things. Now, I'm looking down at my floor here, and I have a box of a few bags of it's whiskey barrel aged coffee from Starbucks because I had one of those in Chicago at the largest Starbucks in the world.
Yep.
And it was a cold brew. And just today, I had some cold brew that I made. I've never made it before in my life. Like it was literally the second time I made it, and I was drinking that today. So, I don't know how to make cold brew. Seemed tasted like that was good. I'm sure I'll try it. What's the worst case scenario? But it didn't scare me. I'm interested in doing new things, but I don't purposefully seek out fear to overcome it. And this conversation does make me go, I don't know, should I?
And you know, it's a great delineation between you have to do something that scares you, or do you have to do something that just gets you out of your comfort zone. You're not really
Right.
sure how to do. It's a really, really good point. One that I think I wish we had Billy back on the episode to
Yeah.
ask him that question, because I could see it both ways. To your point, I love the fact that you do bring yourself out of your comfort zone to do new things. I think I do that equally as well. I like to go to new places. I like to visit a
Yep.
new restaurant. I love to expand my horizons. But doing something that scares me may push you a little further. And I'm not necessarily talking about physically something that scares you. There could be things that we should do that we just don't do. And so I want to just challenge myself in that thinking as I prepare my 2023 plan. You know, what are some of those things that would be healthy for me to flex in that area? Because I never really think about that.
Yeah. And, I want to conclude with when he talked about connection and he quoted, he didn't know who the source was, but he said, you only need 6 people to carry your coffin. Just wanted to take a minute to let you know you're one of the 6. And in terms of connection, I'm so grateful for being able to do the podcast with you. And that was the first thing I thought of when he said that, and thought of you.
Well, I appreciate that. I got to go find my 5 others, though.
You got to find your 6 because I'm not one of them. I heard that.
No. I said I got to go find my 5. You're one.
I know.
No, I appreciate that, Rich. And look, I can't wait to hear how the conference goes with you guys. And I'm sure Billy's going to knock it out of the park.